Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, IT Insights, Navigating Through Working from Home. I would now like to introduce Mark Green, co-founder and business development manager for Stryker Networks. Mark, thank you for joining us again. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Dawn, for the introduction. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all healthy and feeling good, feeling well. My name is Mark Green. I'm co-owner of Stryker Networks. Stryker Networks is an IT firm supporting the healthcare industry. And today we're going to discuss working from home and all the security ins and outs and risks that go along with that. So one thing I want to offer up to you is that we put together a white paper that should be available, I believe, on Monday. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Setting Up Telemedicine and Remote Network Access for Your Staff During this COVID-19 crisis. And so I want to make that available to you by just simply sending me an email. My email address is on the screen right now. It's mgreen@strykernetworks.com. So send me an email. I'll be happy to send you the white paper. So that being said, we're going to begin, and we're going to talk about working through and navigating working from home. And there's some core challenges in preparing and working from home, and challenges that we weren't thinking about a month ago. And those challenges are different in nature. One of the challenges we want to talk about is the psychological challenge, which we thought we would never have to deal with or talk about a psychological challenge of somebody working from home because we've never worked from home for more than a short period of time in general. And when this crisis first happened, we thought it was only going to last a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, but it looks like it's going to be 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months. And so with that, there's psychological issues that happen. We're going to discuss that. We're also going to discuss accessing all your applications, your systems remotely, the problems that you have with that, and the security risks that might be involved in that. We're also going to be talking about how we can protect your network, both from the home standpoint, because people are accessing it from home, right? And as well as the means and methods and systems out there and the proper best practices from a security standpoint to be able to access that data. Or also things that most of our clients didn't think about, is that's called printing from home, copying, scanning. How do we do that from home when all of our copy machines are in the office? We're going to talk about communications and phone systems and how that works from home, and with systems being on premise in the office, how do we continue to communicate with our clients as well as with our staff? And then we're talking about the electronic and the physical security nature of what we do from working from home. And we'll talk a little bit about the legal documentation that's necessary, that you should be thinking about and having prepared for instances like this, because let's hope not, but this could very well happen again, and we need to be prepared. We've learned a lot working with our clients. Our clients have learned a lot. We've learned a lot in preparing for this in the future. So there are going to be some changes, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about the psychological challenges, the psychological part from working from home. Now, again, who would thought that there'd be psychological issues and depression and other things that go along with working home, the disconnection that you might see, the loneliness, the isolation, the disconnection with the staff and your friends and coworkers, right? So in order to navigate this, we have to have a well-strategized plan to try to figure out, how do we communicate with each other? How do we stay in community with each other? How do we communicate with our patients and so forth? So we have to do that through a couple different means, and one of them is through technology and the tools that are available, and we're going to talk about that. You also need to be able to make sure that you can access your systems, your EMR systems, your practice management systems, your email, all that kind of stuff from home, being disconnected from your office environment. We're going to talk about how you communicate with your staff, how you keep that bond together, because psychologically they're disconnected. They're in a different environment. They're not structured, and you need to be able to stay in communication with them. And one of the ways that you do that is through video conferencing or video communication. And We do that here in our office all the time. Right from the very beginning, I said to everybody that we're going to stay in regular communication and contact with each other. We're going to make sure that we still are in community with each other, that we still have meetings set up and all that. So we meet all the time. I talk to my staff all the time. And when we do that, we do it through video chat. I need to see them. I need to see their expression. I need to see if they've shaved and showered or combed their hair or, put their makeup on, whatever that might be. I need to make sure that they're, being presentable. I need to see the expressions on their face. I need to see them laugh. I need to see them, get upset, whatever that might be. There's something about having that video, that view of looking into somebody's eyes and talking to them. And that's something that's real important. Phone calls are good. There's nothing wrong with phone calls, but you're not seeing that expression. And then with the emails and text, that's really impersonal. That's really separating yourselves from being able to be emotionally, if you will, attached, and vice versa. They're emotionally attached with you as well when you do the video conferencing. One of the things that we do in our office, we support clients from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. So we work in shifts. And the morning shift, we used to come in, they used to go to the kitchen, they would have their coffee time. They call it coffee talk. They'd sit there and they'd laugh and joke with each other, have their little time to get kind of prepared for the day. But with the COVID-19 and everybody working remotely, you can't have that same experience. So what they decided to do, and they did this on their own, it had nothing to do with me, they decided to go ahead and set up a morning meeting where those same group of people through video chat get together and they have their coffee talk and they laugh and they have their coffee together, and sometimes their spouses pop in or their animals, their cat or their dog pop into the scene for a few minutes, but it makes that experience more human and puts people back together again instead of being disconnected. Because as you know, at some point, and hopefully soon, we're going to all get back together again, and we don't want to have to redevelop those relationships. So it's all about the relationship side of things from within your office. And so this is going to help mitigate the loneliness and the isolation and the disconnection that you're going to see with some psychological challenges. Also, what I've implemented with our team, and I would suggest that you do the same with yours, the only way we're going to survive this over a long period of time, and again, I hope it's not much longer because it's killing all of us, right, is that we can only survive through discipline. And I've learned this through many different people that I follow. And what I mean by discipline is you stay in your routine. So I've encouraged everybody, in fact, more than encouraged, everybody has to stay in a routine. They need to get their 8 hours of sleep every night. So you don't stay up all night watching Netflix and doing whatever else and then trying to, have a half night's sleep and then try to wake up and perform your duties for the day. That doesn't work very well. It's actually not good also getting out of a routine. It's not good for you psychologically. So I suggest that they get up, they get their 8 hours, they get up every morning at the same time, they take their shower, they shave, or they put their makeup on, and they comb their hair, they dress with something appropriate, and they get ready to get in front of their computer for their daily work. And they take their lunch when they normally would take their lunch. They exercise on a regular basis, whether that means walking around the block or going in the basement or working out or whatever you do in the house, doing push-ups, floor exercises, yoga, whatever it is, to keep on that routine day after day. You rinse and repeat, and do that day after day. That's the only thing that I tell my staff that it's going to get them through this. Constant communication, stay in a routine, and discipline is going to get us through this. And that's my 2 cents on that. We're also going to start talking about how do we access and how do we utilize our systems while we're remotely disconnected. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is through various methods. And it's really going to depend on the type of environment that you have. If all your applications are cloud-based, then that's one way of accessing things. So your email, if you're using a cloud-based email, you're going to get through that as long as you have an internet connection and a computer, you're going to be able to get your email. You're going to be able to get to the EMR system if it's cloud-based without a problem. You're just simply going to log on to the website, log into your EMR system, and start to work. the thing that you have to look at, and the things that we have to look at as well, and one of our main jobs is to make sure that as an IT company, we have to make sure that everything, all the systems are running all the time, that all the access and the user needs are being met all the time. That's whether they're on premise or in their office or in your practice office or remotely. That's our main job. In order to do that, we also have to make sure that you're doing it in a secure fashion. And with all the work from home stuff that's going on, a lot of that security is lax because you're not in your office. You're not where all your firewalls and your security and all your policies are in place. You're remote, and we have to be able to make sure that we help the end users, employees, access things in a secure manner without much disruption, without making it hard and crazy and impossible for them to do their work. The second way that we have to help clients work is when they have on-premise. Means your system sits in your office, and they have to be able to remotely access the office. And the way we do that is through virtual private network, or VPN. I'm gonna explain this a little bit. Excuse me, because I'm gonna look at my other screen, so I'm gonna look away from the camera for a few minutes. But you should be able to see my mouse on the other screen. I want to explain a little bit what a VPN looks like, and the reason is because there's some security issues here that need to be addressed, and I want you to understand at the basic level of how that works, right? So here's the person at home, sitting at home. They run software. It's called a VPN software that connects to, and the VPN provider is your office. Let's say your system is sitting on a server in your office, your EMR system, practice management system, whatever, is sitting at the office. You need to access it from home. So we're going to run some software that's going to connect and create a VPN tunnel. I'll explain that in a second. To the firewall, which authenticates you to the network. So it's like taking a long network cable, running it from your office system all the way to your home. So when you make that connection is always happens, and this cloud here is the internet. It always happens, it connects through the internet, but you don't want your data floating around the internet for bad guys to grab the data and to parse off information, especially when it's PHI information, right? So when you establish the VPN tunnel, the reason it's called a tunnel, it creates a direct connection from the end user all the way to the server. And this is like a pipe, or like a conduit pipe. So the internet can't get to the information because there's a pipe here. So that pipe is protecting the outside bad guys from getting the information. Not only that, if they were to penetrate this barrier, this pipe, the information that's traveled back and forth here is encrypted. So even if they were to get somehow tunnel through or penetrate through this pipe, the data that they're going to get at is going to be no value to them because it's encrypted. They don't have the decryption key. So this is the secure way of connecting to your office, providing that your office and your applications are not cloud-based. They're based on the premise at your practice, and you have to access it. So we set our clients up with a secure connection to be able to run their data and their information. So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of how that works. There's several different ways of being able to access your data. And I'm going to switch back and forth between screens here for a second. So if, let's say you have QuickBooks running at your server in the office, or other EMR systems or whatever applications that you might have sitting in your home office or in your practice office. So you're going to connect to it through the VPN. Getting back to that picture that I had, I'm going to switch back to that slide for a second. Again, I'm going to look away from the screen for a second. So you're connected here through the VPN, and you're going to start running QuickBooks. Let's say it's sitting over here. The first method is you're going to run it directly from the server, which means all the processing happens on your computer. And so you click on the icon of QuickBooks, and it's going to take the data that's at your server. It's going to run it through the tunnel here, and then it's going to appear here. And it's going to have your login screen. Then you're going to log in, and you're going to send that data all the way back through the tunnel, back to the server to log in. And then QuickBooks is going to appear. It's going to send that information all the way through the tunnel back to your computer so you can see QuickBooks, your EMR system, whatever that might be. The problem that you have with this is you're sending large amounts of data back and forth securely on an encrypted tunnel, but it's taking forever. takes forever to open up the information. If you want to open up a file, it's going to take forever because the file's going to open up here, then it's got to send that file through the VPN connection to your computer. Now, if your home office has a slow internet connection, it's going to be painfully slow. That is one way of doing it. It's not the recommended way of doing it. Instead, the second one is using, excuse me a second here. Second one is what's called remote desktop. And if you remember that picture, the remote desktop allows you to have a VPN connection to that server, but then you're just viewing the server. It's called screen scraping. You're only visually seeing the server as if your computer is acting as a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. That data is not transmitting, the physical data is not transmitting back and forth. You're simply viewing it on the server. The server is doing all the processing. You open up QuickBooks, like the last example. You open up QuickBooks, that QuickBooks processing is happening on the server. You're just looking at it as if you're a monitor. You'll be able to see it, you'll be able to interact with it. That way, that large amount of data is not transversing back and forth, and you're getting a much better, much cleaner, a much faster experience. And we have that set up for a lot of our clients. The downside on that is that when they make that VPN connection, open that remote desktop, they pretty much have access to the entire network via the server. So they can go to any kind of files, and applications and all of that, which might be fine for a lot of people. But you may want to restrict that down a little bit. So the second way is called application server or remote apps. It's a function of the remote desktop connection, but it handles it in a different way. And what it does is it creates icons on your desktop of your home computer. QuickBooks icon, a EMR icon, a practice management icon. You simply click on that on your computer. It's doing the same thing. It's still viewing it, and all the processing is happening at the server at your office, at your practice office. And so large amounts of data is not transversing, but you're being able to have that same experience of remote desktop, but you're able to restrict the end user of what they can use. You can use QuickBooks. You don't see that icon, you can't use QuickBooks. You can access a certain folder on the network. You're not able to do that. Basically, it's depending on what we set up from a security standpoint of what you can access and what the end user can access, what the end user can't access. It's a much more secure, quicker, better solution, and this is the primary solution that we use for all of our clients in setting up their the remote access. Again, I'm sure there'll be questions on that. So moving on, we're going to talk about how you protect the company network. Getting that VPN connection is great, but you're also making your network susceptible to viruses and things like that from the home computer. So we want to make sure that we take some necessary precautions on the home computer, because remember, we're connected. It's like dragging that network cable all the way from your office to your home computer. We have to make sure that anything that's on that home computer doesn't transverse back into the server. So we have to make sure that on the home computer that you don't have an obsolete operating system. As you know, Windows 7 operating system is not being supported anymore by Microsoft. There's no more patching being done and all that. And so their suggestion is to move to Windows 10, which is patched all the time. And so you have to make sure that you're doing that. But also, if you do have Windows 10 and you do have a supported operating system, you have to make sure that your Windows updates are turned on and not turned off, and that your machine is being updated all the time. Because for our clients, when you have computers on-premise or at your practice, we have systems in place where we monitor, manage, push updates, push antivirus, push anti-malware, anti-spyware, make sure they're up to date all the time, and make sure that there's no breaches on that home computer. I'm sorry, the office computer. We don't have the same capability of being able to do that for the home computer unless the client asks us to do that, and then we have to be able to implement that same software and management and monitoring onto the home computer, which is possible. But again, originally we thought this was going to be 1, 2, 3 weeks. Now it's like 1, 2, 3 months. And so that thought in doing that is becoming more relevant now, where before they said, that's okay, we'll just let it go for a few weeks, and then we get back to the office, we'll be back to being secure again. And so because of that, there's an increase in cybercrime and all that. So you need to make sure that you have a valid operating system that's being patched on a regular basis, that you have up-to-date and adequate antivirus, anti-malware software. You have to make sure that your end users are not storing PHI and PII information on your home computer that other family members may store. And you have to make sure that you have some sort of firewall, some sort of secure connection with your internet at home. The other recommendations are that not only do you make sure that your home computer is secure and that it's being patched, but you have to make sure that you put in place some best practices. You have to make sure that when you're using the home computer or taking the computer home, that you're doing it in using Wi-Fi in a secure fashion. That you're making sure that your desktop and laptop hard drives are encrypted. And what I mean by that is there's software that can encrypt the hard drives on those computers. So if that computer was stolen, if the computer was lost or left in a cab somewhere, if you're out and about or somebody borrowed it or you moved it somewhere else, if somebody grabs that computer, because the data on the hard drive is encrypted, you don't have to worry about somebody else grabbing that information, because they're not going to be able to do it without encryption. HIPAA says that if you lose a computer, if it gets stolen, if somebody comes and breaks in your practice, steals all your computers, and the hard drives are encrypted, you don't have to report that to the HIPAA authorities, to the proper authorities. You don't have to do it because you follow the best practice of having that data encrypted. And then you also have to, again, talk about not having that personal PHI information stored on your local computer. What we're seeing a lot happening is, because this is so crazy and so weird, all the security has been relaxed, HIPAA requirements have been relaxed for telemedicine and some of the other stuff. Not really relaxed, they're just not going to enforce it for right now. They're putting a pause on the enforcement of those regulations. So it's a little bit, as I explained last week, it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West, to where we're backing off and relaxing all of our securities, all of our best practices and all that. And what's happening is that's becoming a problem with an increase, about a 600% increase in cybercrime since February. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So again, you have to make sure that your home computers are secure. You also need to look at, how do you function at home? And here's one of the areas where a lot of our clients didn't think about, and that's in the printing, copying, and scanning side of things. And some of the things that you need to look at is, is my workstation Wi-Fi compatible? We had quite a few clients that had office personnel that had desktops, not laptops. So they're like, great, we'll grab the desktops, we'll bring them home, we'll get them all assembled, which in itself is not easy, right? Get it all assembled, get up and running, and then they call up and they said, we have no internet. And we said, but we had internet at the office, but we don't have internet at home. And we said, well, at the office, you had Ethernet cable plugged into your computer. Now you're at home. Your internet connection, your Comcast, or whatever you have, is connected in the family room. Your office is in the basement. There's no way you're going to run an Ethernet cable from the family room down through the living room, through the stairs, and plug your desktop in. And so how do you get access to Wi-Fi? So you have to make sure that ahead of time, we tried to help our clients with contingency plans to say, okay, if you're bringing desktops home, you need to purchase X amount of USB Wi-Fi antennas to plug into your desktop so that you can access the Wi-Fi at home, so that you can connect to the internet, so that you can use your VPN, and so that you can use other functions. So that's one of the things that are in consideration. Now, going forward, I can tell you that there's going to be contingency plans for all of our clients. They're going to demand that, and they're going to say, if this happens again, here are the protocols, here are the things that we need to have in place so we can easily switch, so we can continue to do our business, so we can continue to bring in revenue. That goes for telemedicine and everything else as well. And that's one of the things that we help our clients with. Printing. Let's talk about that for a second. We've had so many clients that said, oh, we're remotely accessing our network from our home computers, and we're printing stuff. But the problem is printing to the printers at the practice office, not at their home. And they didn't think about that and says, oh, well, yeah, I have a printer at home. How do I get that connected? And then we have to get USB connection, go through a bunch of different gyrations to get their home printing working because they have to print. And then they go, oh, now we have to scan a bunch of documents and send them out. I'm like, okay, my printer doesn't have a scanner on it. Well, now we have to get a printer with a scanner because you can't scan without a scanner like you can in the office because you're sitting at home. So these are all the things that have to be thought about. And I'm sure you've gone through a lot of that because we've been disconnected from the office for several weeks now, and you've probably gone through all this stuff. We also have to make sure that when you're scanning the email, scanning a document and you want to email it, that we have to be able to make sure that that email can be sent in a secure manner through email system to make sure that we're protecting all the private information, the private health information. So that's a problem that we've had to address for most of our clients. Another good example would be we print checks. The check printer, that printer has a micro cartridge which actually prints the magnetic strip on the bottom of the checks. That's sitting at the office. Our accounting working from home, and they need to be able to send checks up, but we can't print those checks. We grabbed all the blank checks, but we can't print the magnetic strip that needs to be at the bottom of the check. So there's all kind of things to consider when you're working from home when it comes to print copying. Another area is the communication side. And so we have to figure out multiple different ways to communicate. Now, I'm sure you've all gone through this before, whether it's the telemedicine, whether you're talking with your existing teams, or working with clients, or having virtual meetings and all that. We need to make sure that we allow software that's HIPAA compliant to be able to be used. And you can use Teams or Zoom or Doxy, WebEx, GoToMeeting. Those are all HIPAA compliant. But there's some things that you have to do with that. You have to make sure that you password protect, or you should password protect every meeting. If you're talking about sensitive information, PHI, things like that, you want to require all the attendees to have a password. So you send them an email and you give them a password. You also have to set up what's called a meeting room, so that as the host, I log on to the system and then I see you coming up, I have to allow you to come into the meeting. And the reason that you want to do that is because you don't want nefarious people getting a hold of, somehow hacking that email, having the login credentials, even the password, to get into that meeting without anyone knowing that you're in that meeting, right? So what you want to do is you want to set up waiting rooms where people join the meeting, you see them there, you allow them to come in, so that now we're all together and we can now talk about sensitive information, PHI, whatever that might be. So those are the recommended ways of communicate, so that we don't get Zoom bombing and all the other things that you hear about out there. So that's really important. The other part is you have to have some sort of backup plan. And we have a backup plan for almost everything. When we manage and monitor and remotely access our clients' servers and computers, we have two different systems that we can use. If one system's down, we grab the second one. So we have some redundancies there. We have 2 or 3 backup video conferencing systems that we use in case one is on the fritz, one is too busy, it's got a bad connection, we jump to the second one, because we want to make sure that we maintain business continuity through everything that we do. So we have to have backup and redundant systems. And you can have backup systems that don't cost don't cost you any money. You just have to have them available and be ready. You have to think, be proactive about that. Let's talk a little bit about the email side of things. And again, the email phishing attempt, which is at the bottom here, is one of the biggest ways that cybercrime happens. And I'll talk about that in a second. So when you're using an email system and you're going to be transferring any PHI information, which we're doing more now than we did before. Again, I like the portal site, putting the information on a portal, have the patients go to the portal and communicate that way. The problem with that is that patients don't have patience, and they're waiting for a response back from the doctor or the staff at the practice on the portal site, and they're waiting and it's not getting quick as responses they would like to have. So they're going to resort to email. So you need to make sure that you put in an email system or utilize an email system that is compliant and secure. Microsoft Office 365 enterprise systems are secure. You can send encrypted emails. Proton email system. I had a question last week that was asked, was I familiar with this email system? At the time, I wasn't. So we spent some time and we looked at it. We evaluated. We found out this is one of the #1 used email systems for encryption, especially in the medical field being used. So highly recommend Proton email systems. What I don't recommend and what we can't use and what we see people using, our clients use and are using it even more so now, are Gmail, AOL, and Yahoo. Now, Gmail, not to be confused with G Suites. G Suites is the paid for business version of Gmail, which is HIPAA compliant. But Gmail itself, AOL, and Yahoo are not. If you're transmitting any kind of PHI, personal health information, through those systems, you're not in compliance. You're subject to hack. Both Yahoo and AOL have been breached numerous times. And when they're breached, that means that they post people's email and passwords out in the dark web for people to be able to buy and use for identity theft. You also have to make sure that you run a good malware application to scan emails, because like I said, the majority of the breaches come from the emails. You have to train your staff and help them understand what it is to use safe practices to avoid the phishing scams. Like I said earlier, that it's been a 400% increase of cyber attack using phishing since February of this year, because of everybody working from home and the relaxation of all the safety protocols that we've always put in place on premise for on-premise practices that are now been removed because people are working from home. That's just a gold mine for them, and especially in Russia, Eastern European. That's where all the attacks and hacks are happening. What they do is they send you a phishing email. For example, you get an email from Microsoft. It looks legit, like it's coming from Microsoft. Even the email address looks a little bit like it might be coming from Microsoft, but if you look at it, it's really not. It says, oh, your email password has expired, and there's a form that comes up that looks very legit. Please put in your email address. Please put in your existing password or old password. Please put in your new password, hit submit. Another window comes up. Thank you for submitting. Your email's been changed. Password's been changed. Problem is that it never has been changed. What happens is they just scammed you for your email address and your password. Now they immediately log into your email system as you, look at your contact list, which could be patients, it could be other doctors, it could be other practices, and utilize that to send out scam emails, scamming them to either transfer money, send personal information. If you're receiving PHI information from patients on your email, they have access to read all email, get all information, to use it for identity theft, for all kinds of things. Complete violation of HIPAA. So you have to train and understand that when you see emails from UPS, FedEx, Microsoft, the post office, FBI, the IRS, they're not going to email you information, especially not the IRS, especially not the FBI. They're going to get actually a mail, something physically snail mailed to you, and you're going to get a phone call. The only way you're ever going to see Microsoft asking for a password change is when you're part of a email system and you've been trained to say every 90 days, our practice changes our email password. And you get that notification when you open up Outlook or you go online to the web browser, you get a notification that your password is going to expire in 7 days, 6 days, 5 days, and so forth. Then you know that that's legit to change it. But if you get an email from Microsoft, which you never will, by the way, and you'll never get a phone call from Microsoft saying, oh, we just noticed that you're infected, you have all kind of problems, you're sending out all kind of spam, this is Microsoft, we need to remote into your computer, we need to look at it. They run some fake scan, they bring up 1,000 errors, and they said, we can repair that, but it's going to be $69. Here, here's the, give me your credit card information, blah, 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 so I can charge you for it. Now they have your whatever, $69, $70. They have all your credit card information. There was really never anything wrong with your computer. And now they just scammed you completely. And especially the elderly or people that are struggling when it comes to working with computers and technology and all that. So be aware of that, okay? Also, one of the last thing I want to talk about is two-factor authentication when it comes to this stuff. We highly recommend two-factor authentication. You can do it with Proton, you can do it with Office 365, you can do it with G Suites. What I mean by that is that when I log into my email and I put my email address and my password in, it sends me a text message to my cell phone, because I have that information in there, and I have to accept that text message. Then it allows me to log into my email account to be able to do that. And the reason that you want that is because if somebody has and scammed your email username and password, and they try to log on to your email account, remember the email account is going to send you a text message to your phone, not to their phone, to your phone. You receive a text message and like, I'm not even on email, or who's accessing my account? You don't authorize it. That person can't get onto your email and then continue to go through their nefarious acts to be able to scam other people. So that's something to really look at and really consider. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the electronic and physical security. We're talking about from an electronic standpoint, and we address this. I just want to really make sure that you understand this, that you have to have up-to-date antivirus and anti-malware. You want to make sure that you're using encrypted methods as much as possible. You want to make sure that you're using a VPN connection when connecting to your remote office. You want to make sure that you have complex and secure and change often your passwords. We talked about, I touched on the dark web for a minute, and we talked about it in our last webinar. What the dark web is, in just layman's terms, is it's the internet where all the criminals reside. It's difficult for the average person like us to be able to get to it. For our clients, we monitor the dark web as part of our security stack. We're constantly monitoring the dark web for anything that pops up with their website, their email information, username, password, and all that, because that's where the criminals go to sell your information. So we proactively monitor it. We get alerts. We see what's there. We contact our clients, let them know, hey, this just popped up on the dark web. LinkedIn was breached, and your email and passwords are on there. You need to go and change those passwords. And so that's what we monitor and make sure that are clean all the time. And then we also make sure that there's a valid and good backup and disaster plan, a backup and disaster recovery plan, or a business continuity plan, as we call it. We always make sure that not only are our jobs to make sure that the systems are up and running and usable for the end user, that they're secure, that they're doing it in a secure way, in a managed way, but that in the case where there's a breach or there's a ransomware or some sort of breach, we have to have the capabilities of being able to recover all those files, folders, applications right away. And so we do that by a couple different methods. One, we have multiple backup methods, redundancy, right? We talked about that. And we also get alerts when a backup isn't successful. And that's a backup, whether it's a backup on the cloud, you have a cloud application, or a backup on-premise application. And we make sure that we are alerted if a backup is not successful, and then we look into it and see why it's not and fix it, mitigate it, right? We also, once a week, restore files from a backup. Just because you have a good backup and it says you have a good backup, if you can't restore files and test it, then you don't know. So we have to test it. And then the last thing we do every month is we actually completely spin up the systems, the server, all the applications, and make sure that they work at our secure data center to make sure that we are testing our disaster recovery applications. So let's talk about physical a little bit, the physical part of it. Again, we have to follow some of the regulations from the PHI standpoint, but now we're working at home, right? And as we're working at home, we're not, that computer's not is in a secure place as you would in an office environment. You have, family members that are walking by, you have other people that are there. And so we have to make sure that a couple things aren't happening. One, you're not sharing the same computer that your kids are gaming on, because they can have access. If you leave a window open or a tab open, they can go and look at the EMR system and see somebody's PHI, and we don't want that to happen. Also, when it's up on the screen and you're looking at it, you don't want people coming by and being able to see your patient's personal information. You're not allowed to do that in the office, and you're not allowed to do that at home. So you got to be, cognizant of that. And you have to make sure that you manage your environment the best that you can, that you keep it as private as possible, and that you have to make sure that your system, your home computer is protected so that the bad guys aren't looking at that information as well. So there's a physical aspect and there's an electronic aspect. Both of them working together is going to keep your environment secure. And it's not just the HIPAA side of things. It's the client breach. And if it ever gets traveled back to, oh, we allowed personal health information to be located on computers visible to other people, or physically there to be able to be grabbed because we don't have a secure environment. You just don't want to get into those. And we've had incidents like that where we can tell a story about that. We just don't have the time to do that right this minute, probably in another webinar that we have. So let's jump in to the legal documentation. So we're not attorneys, we're not telling you what to do here, but we are asked a lot to put in policies and procedures, and what are our recommendations for policies and procedures to help keep the assets of a company safe, right? So we're talking about company assets. We're talking about the documentation that shows what employees have what property of your practice, especially taking it home. Everybody's grabbed their stuff, racing home. You should have an inventory of what that is, so you know what each employee has, because it's your physical equipment, which costs money, and your responsibility. And the reason that you need to do that is because down the road, you may have to collect that, right? You want to be able to have policies in place that talk about acceptable use for PHI on the local machine, from secure encrypted email, and how to do that. Here as a company, here's what we expect from you, and you're going to agree that you're going to comply to that, so that we have an understanding. It's like a BAA. You have an understanding that we have certain responsibilities, meaning the end user, the employee at home, and the company has certain obligations as well. So you need to make sure you have clear, defined policies for that. If you don't have them and you need some help with that, we can help you with that. And you certainly, if you don't have them now, you need to put those together and certainly have them for the future. And the reason that I talked about having a clear list of assets and all that is having a termination policy. And as we are going through these hard times, and as the weeks go on and on and on, we are furloughing more and more people, and or terminating people. If you're terminating the people, you have to have a clear policy as well as a document for getting and returning that information, and changing of passwords and all that kind of stuff, or the destruction of company assets or intellectual property. And what I mean by that is for the employee who's been terminated, you have to put policies in place that say that they're responsible for that data, and they're going to be liable for the destruction of any of that information, or for the communication of that information, of any assets or intellectual property. That belongs to the practice and not to the employee. And you have to make that very clear in doing that. So that's all I have for right now. I'm open for questions. I know I covered a lot. I know we moved fairly quickly. I hope you found this somewhat informative. And again, you can ask the questions now or send me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions I can for you. So Dawn, back to you.